how big do you want to build your company? Well, I don't know, as big as I can, I think. I could swap out company with wealth. Well, how much wealth do you want to have? Like, I don't know, as much as I can. I'm pretty sure that's what I'm supposed to, as much as I can sounds good. The problem with as big as I can or as much as I can is that that's not a quantifiable number. As much as possible is not quantifiable. And because it's not quantifiable, it's literally not achievable. And so when you're pursuing something that's not achievable, that can end poorly in, a negative experience. So the good news is that with the right work, you can actually quantify what is enough. And because enough is actually quantifiable, it is achievable. And so one of the things that we do with founders is we have a really sophisticated, methodology of coming up with what is their walk away number, meaning on an after-tax basis, how much you need to fund the life that you have envisioned for yourself.
I'm Brandon Reed, and you're listening to Ready, Set, Startup, a podcast that brings you industry-tested perspectives from leaders working in all areas of the startup lifecycle, so you can learn from the wisdom that they've gained over years in their fields of expertise and apply it in your own entrepreneurial journeys. Let's get into it. On today's show, I'm talking with Chris Girbés, founder and CEO at 5 Oceans Advisors. It wasn't long after taking his first role in a wealth management firm that Chris saw the obvious flaws in the standard model of advising. He didn't want to sell products and earn commission. He wanted to intimately understand the needs of his clients and meet them with robust, relevant, personalized financial and life plans. So he started his own firm to do just that. 10 years in, Chris and his team truly are approaching financial advising and wealth management in a different way than I've ever encountered. In our conversation, we talk through Chris's experience helping founders specifically to define a plan that covers 360 degrees of their financial future. As we discuss, finances are part of it, yes, but a financial plan is only in place to service what is ultimately the plan for your life and for your family's life. It's a super refreshing take on wealth management and provided a really unique perspective on something that affects all of our lives. I love Chris's insights that he's gained not only as a founder himself, but as an advisor to founders in an area that is so central to all of our lives and businesses. There's so much to unpack in this episode. But before Chris had millions of assets under management, he was training to be a professional athlete by day, and by night, cleaning carpets.
I would love to say that I started my first business when I was 6 years old, but I'm not one of those people. I don't have
selling
that story.
Candy on the playground,
I did, looking back, I did do entrepreneurial things, I think, from a young age. I remember like cold calling out of the yellow pages to raise money for our neighborhood's 4th of July fireworks show, for example.
That's pretty entrepreneurial.
Like if I really think about it, I've got some entrepreneurial stuff in there, but really my messaging from my family was like the person that seemed the most financially secure in my family was my grandfather on my mom's side, and he was a professor. And so the messaging from my family was like kind of traditional and be conservative and safe and get a job. So I definitely had the entrepreneurial bug though. So for example, I graduated from college. I actually played football in college. I was a quarterback and I wanted to pursue professional sports. So I knew I was going to have to train right after I graduated. And I knew to train as much as I wanted to, I couldn't get a job. So I was broke just out of college with student loans. I put $7,000 worth of carpet cleaning equipment on a credit card and started a little carpet cleaning business that allowed me to work, 10 or 15 hours a week and then train my face off the rest of the time. And so again, it was in there, but once kind of football sports got what was behind me, I definitely went into like get a job, have a salary mode. And I did that for quite some time. I found my way eventually to the wealth management, space where what I'm in today. But I was at a larger company. I was an advisor, salary position. I got recruited by a woman who was starting a startup wealth management firm, and I went to work for her. I was the COO, and that was great. I had this startup experience, but she paid me a salary, and a couple of years in, while we had actually a good amount of success, she decided she just didn't love running and owning a business anymore. And she sold that thing to a larger wealth management firm. And by that time, I had some exciting things going on in my life. For example, I was getting engaged. And I was like, I don't think I want to go back to the, earn the salary. And then if I do well, bump up a little bit and then bump up a little bit more. And so I was kind of forced in. If I didn't want to do that, it was like, now's the time. I had done everything in wealth management from like the bottom up, everything from account opening paperwork to trading and managing portfolios to financial planning. The one thing I had never done was gone out and get my own clients. That was like the big question mark. But I had a jolt of optimism and confidence and thought, I think I can do this. It was way harder than I thought, but so this was, now we're into 2015, 10 years ago. I moved to Los Angeles, which is where my wife lived. Even prior to that, I was already virtual at that smaller wealth management firm, but I moved to Los Angeles, proposed to my wife, and started my business all within this very short period of time. And I started with, 0 clients and 0 assets under management. So it was a exciting but scary time. But that's really how my path to entrepreneurship was somewhat forced. It was like, I don't want to go back into the traditional model. I've got to start my own thing. And so I did.
Yeah. And I mean, you say forced, but like, I don't know, man, that you had other options. You just didn't consider them as options for yourself. Like you were like, that's not what I want. Right. So like I guess you can call it forced, but you forced yourself, which is a different kind of motivation. It's a different kind of path to take to say, I mean, you could have absolutely just gone and said, okay, I have this experience now. Let me go just use it in another firm. But to build your own thing and start from scratch is hard. And man, you were checking off all the boxes, weren't you? You were like engaged, married, start new company.
Move to new city.
Move across the country. Yeah. Man, yeah. Of all the things that are supposed to stress you out, you're supposed to be like one at a time. You're like, let's just do them all. But yeah, no, that's awesome. And that's an exciting time. So tell me, when you decided to do that, you said you had, 0 assets under management, no actual like sales experience. You're going to get clients. Did you find anybody that had that experience? I guess my question is, did you start this company with the co-founder? And if not, why'd you make that choice to go that direction? Yeah,
I started my company, just me. It was in fact, we shouldn't even use the word company or business. We should call it a practice, because it was a solo advisor practice. Why did I decide at that time? It's kind of what I knew. I knew I could do it. I needed to move quickly too, by the way, right? Like my last job went away. I needed to move quickly. So it was like, boom, just set up and go. And I had some savings. I didn't have a ton of savings, but I had some. And I don't know. I didn't even, if I think back to it, I wasn't thinking, oh, should I go find a co-founder? It was just go. So that was your question.
That makes sense. And I think that is often where people land, is like, man, co-founder, did I even know the term when I started the company? I just needed to make money. And so like, I just put my head down and did it. And that sounds like that was the position you were in. When you made that step, you had some experience working, as a salaried employee, as a COO though, in a leadership position. But when you went to go do this thing for yourself, was it to your expectation? Like, is it what you thought it would be? And how did it not match up to your expectation? What differed?
Yep. Good question. It definitely didn't match up. A lot of it was what I thought it would be. I knew it would be hard. I knew it would be a grind. The thing that didn't match up the most was how long it would take. That's just flat out.
To get momentum?
To get to wherever it was I thought I was going. And to be honest, that's played out kind of ever since then.
Yeah.
All the goals I've set all along the way, they've always taken longer than what I thought I could in my mind. I guess you could call that overconfidence, but I think they say that about entrepreneurs. If we weren't overconfident, we probably wouldn't do it in the first place. I mean, and the overconfidence with regards to, oh, I think, I'll probably, the business can be here in 3 years. Well, that was, 6 years. And that's continued to be a theme. But that was the thing that was most out of alignment was the expectation around time. In fact, sometimes I'll get reached out to ask me about my wealth management journey from other financial advisors and whatnot. And sometimes they'll tell me, thinking about doing this, want to pick your brain. And I've got a year runway, and I just immediately stop them. And I said, dude, that's just not going to do the trick. I'm here. I promise you, you're going to need, or you at least want more than that. But yeah, time I just think is, of course, such a important factor.
And I'm sure a big part of that was, as you say that, isn't I'm assuming it's time to go get clients to have more assets under management, to actually build some momentum, have some money coming in the door. And like, how did you make sure you were doing that? What did you do as you first got started to say, okay, I need to go find people? It's, as you said, not an experience that you had before that. How did you gain that experience and go about that when you first started?
I very much so did I call it the proverbial 10,000 cups of coffee. I think there may be
Yeah.
an article written or a book written. Maybe I think it might be called 1,000 cups of coffee. I've always called it 10,000 cups of coffee just because I don't remember how many. It's just a lot. It's just a
Yeah.
lot, but
Yeah.
1,000 cups of coffee. So I was newly married and, in a new city. So I didn't have any kids. And, I would say my policy was, I'm going to say yes to everything, any event, any dinner, lunch, I got invited to, it was yes to everything. So I was just all over town. And of course, I'm telling people what I did. I think people are interested when you tell them, oh, I just started something,
Yeah.
and so they would ask me questions, and some of those conversations led to, some of those people saying, oh, I want to learn. I'm actually interested in learning more about that. And so then it was about giving free advice. I would give people my time. What, at least for me, when you're starting like a service-based business, one thing you have a lot of when you have no clients is you have a lot of time. And so I was just giving my time and free advice. I mean, as much as I could help, I would just help as much as I could in these conversations. Soon as someone, even I got a sniff of like, oh, I'm interested in learning more. Great. What's your calendar look like Thursday? You want to grab coffee? You want to grab lunch? And then I would teach them, everything I could to help them, help them, not be taken advantage of what I felt was the dark side of the financial services industry. And then out of those conversations, a few of those folks said, hey, I'd love your help. I'd love to work with you. And then, the story kind of goes on from there, but some of those folks who said, I'd love to work with you were entrepreneurs and founders who were really in similar state. Most of them were a little further along than I was, but still early in their businesses, and several of those businesses became big businesses, and my business continued to grow as a result. But in the beginning, I wasn't good at writing. I mean, I'm a decent writer, but it felt like a heavy lift to like write a blog post. I looked around at other advisors, not that I would consider them competition, but actually people I looked up to, and how are they getting clients and whatnot. And a lot of folks were writing blogs at the time, and even making content. And I just wasn't good at that. I didn't feel comfortable in front of the camera. The only thing that I felt like I was pretty good at was talking to people face to face. And so I just tried to do as much of that as possible. That
Nice.
was my
Awesome.
strategy, for better or for worse.
No, that's great. I love that. And yeah, leaning into your strengths. As you were continuing to establish your business, build it, grow it, I mean, at some point, every entrepreneur who has a successful company that they're scaling runs into the moment of, oh man, I can't do all of this alone. I don't have the time to do it. Or my business is starting to get wide enough that there are areas that I'm just not skilled in. I'm not gifted in, I don't have experience in, and I need help. When you hit that point in your business, what were those first few roles that you identified as needing to hire and bring on board, and why? How'd you go about that?
Yeah. The realization of, I'm just not great at this, those things that those started to happen pretty quickly early
Yeah,
on.
me too. Me too. Yeah.
So one interesting thing that I think about entrepreneurship, and again, my focus is of entrepreneurship. I mean, I guess what I've been exposed to the most is service based, mostly wealth management, firms. That's the industry I know the most. And so when I started my practice, I knew a bunch of other people that started practices as well. In fact, we all collaborated and would talk about best practices, really helped each other. We had a great community, which I highly recommend. Find a community of like-minded folks. And in this case, they were all doing the same thing I was. Still dear friends with literally all of them to this day. And what I've seen over 10 years, very interesting, is every single one of us like found a lane that we were both good at and that we enjoyed. And those lanes have all been different. And so to see everyone progress through their careers or through their business, their business ownership journey, I should say, has been really interesting. And for me, the first, so 5 years in, I partnered up with my now partner, my business partner, and that allowed me to have two things. One, not only enough money to take home to my family, because at this time I just had our first child, but also have enough resources to be able to actually reinvest now and hire. So our first employee was, Swiss Army knife. He was amazing. He's no longer with us, today, which is, a whole other story that I think is good. He went on a great path, and, but the dude was still an all-star. And so it was amazing because for the first time, and he did everything. He was my support advisor. He did operations, technology, and he was young and ambitious and wanted to learn. So it was cool for him because he got to get exposure to like the entire business as opposed to getting hired as like a portfolio manager. And that was the first time that I felt I might even go as far as calling it like adrenaline or the rush of having other people do things better than you can. It was like,
yes.
Oh,
dude.
I've been missing this my whole life.
Yes.
And then from there, once I got a taste of that, I've been building on that ever since. But the first hire was Swiss Army knife, but also very much so like certified. He got his certified financial planner designation during that time and was a support advisor for me personally as one of the many roles he.
That's awesome. That's awesome, man. I totally identify with that. You're like, it's almost like it's like a dopamine hit to like get someone else do something as good as you would have done it. Like you give a task and they come back to, and that's a really, really good feeling and an important one to realize. And then when you start having people who can do that, I have a couple people in my job even now, the people that I've found that I'm like, oh my gosh, they're perfect where they are. It's almost like I'm nervous all the time. I'm like, I know this isn't forever, but I've trained you and like you're here and you're work and like, you just put so much time and effort into training people. It's really tough when they go. But it's good to find those people and their huge milestones. It can help hit those early milestones in a business. I'm super curious to hear, Chris, I'm so, this is not the world I inhabit. And so I'm going to probably use wrong terminology. I'm going to say it the wrong ways. But when I think wealth management, I hear someone, oh, I'm in wealth management. I'm like, how do you differentiate yourself? Like there's so many people in wealth management, like, so it's like, okay, great. Like I could choose you or I could choose you. I could choose you. But each one of those people, if you sat down with them, they'd have a very real, hopefully have a very real story to tell of like, here's why we're different. Here's what we do. But you just think, well, you just manage my money. So how do you approach that conversation? My question really is, how do you differentiate yourself from other people in wealth management doing what you're doing? How are you creating a defensibility around you, your business, and making sure that you are different, offering something unique?
That is a really, really big question. And, I'll just start by saying it's really hard to differentiate. I mean, there are a lot of, I was joking last week. I went to a dinner. It was dads from my kids' pre-K class. And there were 20 dads showed up to this dinner, which was cool. And in my head, I go, I know at least 5 of these dudes are in wealth management. and I was totally wrong because only 4 out of the 20 were.
Oh, nice.
But it's just funny because you're totally right. So I would say we are trying really hard to differentiate. And at the end of the day, I think we do. I mean, really at the end of the day, even just your personal advisor is a person with their own unique personality, with their own unique outlook on life, their demeanor, all that stuff. That's of course different because we're all unique human individuals. But I'll start here. Big picture. When I talked about the dark side of the financial services industry, when I first got in the business, in the industry, I used to earn different amounts of commissions for selling different financial products. So I would earn, if I sold an annuity versus a mutual fund versus this portfolio of funds versus a life insurance. And what I realized like 9 months into that role was that this was not an advice company. It was a
Yeah,
sales company. It was
totally.
just a sales organization
Interesting.
that cared about when we talked about in our weekly and monthly meetings, we talked about quotas and commissions and what's
Interesting.
paying the highest. It wasn't we were talking about what's the best
Right.
things, what's the best for our clients and their families.
Hmm.
Didn't take me long to realize that I didn't want to be any part of that. And so I became what's known as what's called a fee only financial advisor. The term fiduciary has been, probably overused at this point, but basically what that meant is that the firm that I went to work for at that point, and still to this day, Five Oceans, my company, we are a fee only registered investment advisory firm as opposed to a broker dealer. We accept zero financial compensation whatsoever from any company to sell their products. So the only place we get compensated is directly from our clients, which is great. It decreases conflicts of interest
Yeah. Feels like that should be the
tremendously,
rule of thumb. Feels like that's
dude.
just how it works.
Dude, it's insane to me.
Hmm.
So it's recommending a product because it pays you more money is, to my knowledge, illegal in medicine. It's illegal
Right.
in law, and I
Yeah,
think
good
it's
point.
illegal in tax. It's not illegal in like financial
Interesting.
advisor services, which is nuts. But
Hmm.
yeah, you would get me on a totally
Yeah.
different
Yeah.
rant
Interesting.
if I went down that path. So at one level, that is a differentiator that we're a fee
Yeah.
only registered investment advisor. But to be honest, there's thousands of fee only
Sure.
registered investment advisors. So I don't really view that as much of a differentiator. It is technically, but not much of
Right.
one. And it's the best when you go to one, you know, RIA, Registered Investment Advisors website, and it says, we're reinventing wealth management. And then you go to the next one and it says, we're reimagining wealth management. And the next one says, we are whatever wealth management. And you look under the hood and none of them are doing any of those things.
Right.
They're all exactly the same.
Yep. Yep.
And so I get a chuckle out of that. But where firms and advisors are differentiating, and I know Five Oceans has as well. I'll just talk about some of the things. Number one, I talked about we'll call it niche. We inside Five Oceans we call it a practice group. But the practice group that I gained the most sort of experience with was young founders, because when I was 33 years old and started the business, nobody would, I started it in Santa Monica where there were a lot of young founders and people that had millions of dollars and that were older. They weren't hiring Chris Girbés, who had no clients and no assets. But these young founders did, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of their businesses grew, and I got to grow with them and learned about a lot of the planning techniques and strategies and not just financial planning, but life issues and the makeup of an entrepreneur. I mean, there's some really serious
Totally.
differentiators amongst the clients, and so I started really focusing my value proposition on founders, and then specifically young founders. So, for example, one of our core in our client experience, one of our services is business continuity planning analysis. It's like, too many founders, when I ask them, particularly, younger founders, do you know what happens to the value of your business if something happens to you? And way too often the answer is, I actually don't know. And sometimes the answer is, I think it's in a document somewhere. So there's like, they have a plan, but they don't know what it is. Well, that's a problem because this is your most valuable asset on your balance sheet, likely, and your family will be potentially in big trouble. And you've built this value, and without a plan, it could literally disappear if something happens to you, the founder. And so, anyways, going off on a little tangent, but this is just one of, a handful of services that we provide to a founder that wouldn't necessarily apply to a, a doctor working in a hospital, or, or a teacher or a pre-retiree, et cetera. And there's other stuff there, business insurance analysis, there's exit planning. And, I can kind of go on and the differentiated services for founders, but that's just me and my practice group. There are other advisors at Five Oceans have their other practice groups where they have differentiated service offerings as well. And then the other piece is that, younger, planning for someone who's selling their business when they're, 65 or 70 years old. It's much different when a client's selling their business and they're 38 or 42 and they have, young kids, or maybe they haven't started a family yet. They have a lot of runway in front of them. There's just different planning issues that present themselves. So I think that's a differentiator. And if you don't mind, and I realize I'm, like selling myself.
No,
my
please talk about how you do what you do. Yeah.
So I apologize for that, but I do genuinely get pumped up about it. My partner, so I mentioned I found a business partner 5 years into my business, which was now 5 years ago. And the thing that we saw eye to eye on the most, so we already checked the box on our investment philosophy, being fee only, those types of things. But what we saw eye to eye on the most was that the best financial planners, and we'll call them financial life planners. The term financial advisor, it doesn't even mean anything in 2025. You could be an insurance salesperson. You could be in high school and help people with their budgets. Anyone's allowed to call themselves a financial advisor. But we'll just use this term financial life planner. I think the best planners out there have shifted.
Is that an actual term? Is that a certified term? Is that the term you guys use internally, financial life planner?
We use the term internally. We don't use it like consistently, or is the only way we refer to ourselves. I don't think there's a designation.
I like the idea. I like even the mindset shift, like going into the conversation. Life planning, and that makes sense. But I was wondering if it's like, oh, you could be a certified financial advisor or certified life planner.
So there absolutely are. So for example, I just recalled there's a designation called a registered life planner, for example. And that is really, I'm not a registered life planner, but that really dives into, life planning. And so a financial life planning is all of it, right? The base is finances. And by the way, finances touch every aspect of your life. But the point is that we saw eye to eye on that we really, the best advisors really go into resource management and not just wealth management. And what I mean by that is money is one of our resources. Other resources that we all have are time, and then we really say good. Attention and energy. Okay. And if we're really helping people, you can't build a financial plan. A financial plan is only in service to a life plan.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, most of us humans, and particularly busy founders, we spend a lot of time thinking about our finances and what's happening in our businesses, and a lot less time thinking about what do we want our life to look like.
So good.
So at Five Oceans, that's a huge part. We have a full-time life strategist on staff. That's a huge part of our value proposition, is that, yes, we do all of the sophisticated investment management and advanced estate planning and tax planning and all that good stuff, but so does every other good wealth management firm. We believe more and more every day that's becoming more and more commoditized. It's already been commoditized for years, but now with AI, it's even more so. And so the resource management piece is a big deal to us, and I think that is one of our differentiators. And again, I think that there are a handful of firms doing a similar thing, but relative to like all the financial advisors in the United States, it's tiny. Like, it's a differentiator. And we'll see that change over time, but we're already there.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I love that. And I want to talk specifically about, what'd you call it, a practice group? Let's see.
Niche practice group. Yep.
The specific kind of niche that you're in. I love that and want to dig into that. I had several questions about, as you're building your company, how are you scaling it? But I want to move right into your experience working with founders, because you're right. That's such a unique thing. It's such a unique individual. And I can imagine you've just learned a lot about that type of person over the years. So kind of to kick that off is, what is a key difference in that mindset, approach, strategy that you're seeing in clients that are founders? Because I'm sure you've worked with others who aren't over your whole career.
For sure.
Versus clients that are versus clients that are not. What are those key differences?
There are so many, and
Yeah.
I'll try to pick a few. So let's talk about one that's like purely financial. Liquidity.
Yeah.
Liqu- I mean, especially young founders, but it could even be the case with, someone who's well into the game, into their like whatever 50s or 60s, where they typically don't have a lot of liquidity.
Yeah.
Typically,
It's all in the business.
their wealth is in their business and maybe some real estate, whether it's
Hmm.
primary residence or some real estate investments. But so liquidity planning becomes
Hmm.
a massive issue that needs to be addressed. I'm just a huge believer that you need to be set up to stay in the game as long as possible. And if you don't do liquidity planning properly, you could find yourself in a situation where you can't stay in the game. So that's one that's like purely financial. Um, I'll talk about one that's in our makeup. So founders, particularly successful ones, have a handful of traits and or characteristics about them that serve them really, really well. That's why they were able to successfully build a big business, and that will also turn around and work against them in the world of investing, in the world of staying rich. So the strategy for getting rich and the strategy for staying rich are two very different strategies. Getting rich is about taking concentrated risk. Staying rich is about diversifying risk. So a couple of these, for example, our founders are way more comfortable with risk, and they are way less comfortable with the perceived lack of control. So, an outside person might look at a founder's like balance sheet and go,
Yeah.
"Dude, you're invested in one micro cap stock."
Right. Right. Right.
Like, and I'm over here and my portfolio is invested in 8,000 companies, publicly traded companies all over the world. And the founder will literally think that they're taking less risk because
Mm.
because they have full, yes, it's one stock, but they have
Mm.
full control over it.
Mm.
And by the way, like I'm not here to argue against that. It's
Sure.
just, again, this is a successful business owner.
Yeah.
A lot of that's true about them.
Mm. Mm.
But many of them, no founder, I've yet to meet a founder that sells their business, at least. And again, I really don't have experience with folks who have sold their business, like, I don't know, in their 60s or 70s, but I've yet to meet a founder that sold their business in their 40s or 50s or 30s that didn't turn around and start another business. Hasn't happened yet. And so there for sure, there's a tendency to want to repeat what
There's a
already
DNA
worked.
component.
There's a
Yeah.
DNA
Hmm.
component,
Hmm.
and there's a tendency to take, double down, take the same amount or even more risk and whatnot. And really, I think the job of an advisor is not to tell, someone what to do with their money. It's to provide them perspective and education and ask really good questions so that they feel empowered to make the best decisions for themselves and their families. But likely after they've sold their first business, their whole life looks a lot different than when they started the business. And whether it's kids, their risk tolerance has changed, et cetera. So yeah, there's the DNA factor as well. And then then there's, and I'll probably have to cut myself off because I could keep going for a long time about different, why founders are different, but they've got different problems, different, or challenges, I should say. So one is, cool, you have this asset that's worth a lot of money, and it's now, if you've done a good job and you've really been successful, now it's spitting off cash. What do you do with it? Do you increase your lifestyle? Do you reinvest it back into the business to, where you can probably make a higher ROI because it is riskier? That's how the world works. More risk, more potential return. Do you start diversifying and building a balance sheet outside of your business? These are all questions that are different for every individual and every circumstance, but that when you're, an employee, or I don't know, any role where you just have, even if your salary is really big, that doesn't apply to you. The reinvestment question doesn't apply to you. You're a, I don't know, pick a job. You're not taking your cash flow and reinvesting it back into your job. So So yeah, I'll stop there, but those are a few that come to mind that are
Those are
different.
really good, man. And you're actually, there's several questions I have in here that I thought of before our conversation that you're like hitting as you're talking through them. Questions that I know a lot of other people who are listening are going to have of like, yeah, how are you thinking about this? What's your mindset as you're working with founders? So I love it. What is one key piece of advice or counsel that you feel you are constantly coming back to, giving repeatedly to founders as they're seeking to build a strong financial foundation, and you're helping them do that? What's something you come back to often?
One thing the thing that comes to mind first is what I said earlier about positioning yourself to be able to stay in the game for as long as
Stay in the game.
possible.
Yeah.
So founders, entrepreneurs, we need more of a protective reserve than the employee at the university, the tenured professor at the university, or any number of other of different professions. You need a serious protective reserve, and it's a little counterintuitive because the traditional financial advice industry would tell you, if you're young, you really shouldn't have very much fixed income. But like this advice is not
Right.
built for founders.
No. Right. Right.
You need a protective reserve so that when your business has a year where you take home no money, you don't
Yeah.
have to go sell a portion or all of your company,
Mm-hmm.
or you don't, or worse, like
Yeah.
fold it.
Yeah.
So I'm constantly reminding this is, you know what? Here's the answer to the question. I'm constantly reminding founders of how fast businesses can go away.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm talking about valuable, successful
Right.
companies.
Right.
And we don't think that's happened to us because we're confident in ourselves and we have success. We also have familiarity bias. Yeah, but I
Yeah.
know what's
Totally.
going on in my company.
Totally.
But I know what's going on in my industry,
Yeah.
so like I'm
I
comfortable
see
with
my
it.
blind spots. I got them. Yeah.
And there's just story after story of, I won't single any company out right now, but small businesses. So I know companies that are worth, you know ones that I'm thinking of right now, $400 million one day, and about 3 months later,
Wow.
gone.
Wow.
You know, couple of serious lawsuits, company
Mm-hmm.
company goes away. So I just yeah, that's one that I'm constantly reminded of.
Totally.
Like you're actually, it's great, and I'm all for reinvesting into the concentrated thing to build significant wealth, but I am here to remind you of what you're doing and to, more importantly, set you up for when things don't go as planned, because it's not a matter of will they not go as planned, it's a
Yeah.
matter of when they won't go as planned.
Man, that's so fascinating. I'm like actively parsing through these things in my life as I'm a young founder, trying to understand. I didn't get a stellar financial education growing up, but I didn't get none. My dad was an entrepreneur. He had a couple businesses, sold a few, and like I had a concept of how to be building wealth and be proactive about that. But I probably heard louder from the world, and so when I'm constantly trying to parse through of like, does that apply to me? Like, does that thing that I've always heard of like, well, make sure you do this and make sure you don't do this, does that apply to me? That feels like it doesn't apply to me, but I don't want to be unwise. But man, my situation's so different as I build this company, and so it's so interesting that you spend a lot of your time doing that. Is going through that with founders and saying, no, that in fact doesn't. And yes, this very much does apply to you. And here's what that looks like in your financial plan. I think that's awesome and really fascinating. What is a common misconception or misunderstanding that you see founders consistently believing in their strategy when they first come to you that you have to work out of them?
Do you mind? I appreciate that question. Do you mind if we go back to the last one again? Because I actually want to
Absolutely.
share something that I think would be very valuable
Please
for
do. Please do.
the
Yeah.
audience of
Tack onto
founders
it.
out there. Yeah. Because while you were talking, I just thought, okay, here's one that's another
Tack
constant,
onto it. I love it.
constantly in them. Okay. So I'm constantly trying to get clients to get very familiar with what is enough for them.
Hmm.
And that is a massive, massive question.
It is.
And it takes deep work to really figure out, as opposed to saying, and,
Such
and
a personal
I
question.
it's such a
Yeah.
personal question. And I know I've talked to many, many people who go, well, think like spending, $50,000 a month. Like, I think that's a number that feels right. And so that's, $600,000 a year. And so if I sell for this much, it's like back of the napkin math, but also they haven't really put in the thought. Like, but what do you want your life to look like?
Yeah.
What is that going to cost you? So here's what I'll tell you, that if, and most founders, and I'd probably argue most humans are, this is human tendency. How big do you want to build your company? Well, I don't know, as big as I can, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah.
I could swap out company with wealth. Well,
Yeah.
how
Right.
much wealth do
Right.
you want to have? Like, I don't know, as much as I can. I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure that's what I'm supposed to, as much as I can sounds good.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The problem with as big as I can or as much as I can is that that's not a quantifiable number. As much as possible is not quantifiable. And because it's not quantifiable, it's literally not achievable. And so when you're pursuing something that's not achievable, that can end poorly,
Yeah. Totally.
in, a negative experience. If
You're
you're
shooting at a
constantly
moving
pursuing
target.
something,
Yeah.
yes, that's literally not achievable. So the good news is that with the right work, you can actually quantify what is enough. And because enough is actually quantifiable, it is achievable. And so one of the things that we do with founders is we have a really sophisticated, methodology of coming up with what is their walk away number, meaning on an after tax basis, how much you need to fund the life that you have envisioned for yourself. That's quantifiable. And doing that exercise is so helpful because now you can have some real context about what you need, where you need to get your business and when you need to get it there. And, and where it is right now is either already there in some cases, or maybe you're not there yet. And so now you can work on doing what you need to do to get it there. But without ever doing that exercise with our clients, we're doing it at least once a year because our life evolves and goals evolve and whatnot. But without doing that exercise, you're kind of just out there working and building, kind of for a moving target, like you said, without the context. And so that's just another really big one is we all need to, this doesn't just apply to founders, but we all need to really get clear on what is enough
Totally.
for us.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. You're right. That is not just an issue that founders have to wrestle with. I mean, it has different implications for a founder versus not. But yeah, absolutely, that would be important to realize. And man, it is. I said that's such a personal question, and it is. And you are in a personal business. I mean, those
Oh
are.
yeah.
You can only help someone as much as they're willing to be vulnerable and be helped. I mean, it's tough to let somebody in. Like, here's my books, here's all my numbers, here's all
Yep.
my hopes and dreams and goals, and versus what I project to the world and what I say I'm making or what
Yep.
I say is important to me. Here's actually where I spend my money and what's important to me and how much I actually have on the books. And that's a very vulnerable thing that you step into. That's crazy.
Dude, it's really vulnerable. I've been in many meetings where, where tears are shed, we're crying, because it's not just about the finances. It's also like what's tough for, going on in my family and, in my marriage and whatnot. And, you know, I'll take this opportunity to actually make a plug for our industry. I think, or like specifically for being an advisor, I think a lot of folks out there have like sort of traditionally been, that's like a finance job. It's kind of, you wear a suit and it's a finance job. But in reality, I think what we do is so special, and that there are a lot of folks with a lot of different backgrounds and skill sets that would be really good at this job, even though they might not think of themselves as the most technically finance,
Yeah.
personal finance, technically like technical expert. And so we always welcome career changers. I think sometimes those are the best folks to really sit in this really special advisor position. And you're right, it's an honor and a privilege to be able to have these types of conversations with folks and to really become a trusted advisor
Right.
in their life. They're putting their
Totally.
livelihood and their
Hmm.
family's livelihood in your hands. It's very fulfilling work. So
Yeah.
anyone
I
out
bet.
there that's looking for something different, I think it's worth looking into personally.
I love it, and I bet it is fulfilling work. And I bet in the same way, it would be disturbing, just as you felt at the very beginning when you were like, "This is not what we're doing. We are just selling," and how wrong that would feel when you are in such a moment of vulnerability and what should be humility, but really you're just trying to sell. What a disconnect that would feel like. How disorienting that would feel.
Yeah.
I do want to go back to our other question. So let's talk through kind of that common misconception. I'm glad you added that because that was a great insight. kind of a common misconception or misunderstanding you see the founders are often coming to the table with when you're building their financial strategy early on?
They tend to think that life ends with the exit of their business. Okay, that might be an exaggeration to say life ends, but like that the journey,
Nothing goes beyond that.
the
Yeah.
journey to success, or the journey of success, I should say, ends at the destination of selling a company for a lot of money. And I'm here to tell anybody that doesn't already know this that is not, that's just far from the truth. So most founders don't spend enough time actually thinking about their next act before they sell. And this is actually one, it leads to, I've sat around a table of, I remember I went to a very bro-y dinner in LA one time.
Yeah.
I'm just going to call it what it is. Okay. I was there. I was one of them.
Yeah.
Pointed the finger at myself as well. And it was just, it felt like, and I also, I felt like I didn't, belong to a certain extent too, because all these, they were like 20 founders. They were all, young and uber successful. And I mean, I probably made, like that year that I went to that dinner, I probably made like $100,000 or something. It was like year 2 of my business.
Yeah.
So I definitely didn't belong at that table necessarily, but what I'll never forget that dinner. And here's why. There was a time, a portion of the dinner that people went around and talked about what they're struggling with. And out of the 20 people, about 20 bros, I think like 15 of them had exited their business already. And I swear 12 or 13 of them all said the exact same thing. And that is they went into a severe depression for a couple or few years after they sold the business. And I remember one said, yeah, my wife and I, we like traveled around the world all over the place for a year, but then it just hit me and I just didn't know who I was and I didn't know what I wanted to do and, tons of money. But anyways, my point is that without putting, not only if you don't do the work to really get clear on what you want your life to look like post exit, you're likely going to have a really tough time. You're going to struggle, similar to how an athlete might struggle after they retire from the game that they've just dedicated 20 years of their life to or whatever. But you're going to struggle. And then also secondly, if you, and this is real, I don't remember the exact statistic, but some really large percentages of sales transactions actually fall through in the 11th hour because the founder gets cold feet, because it hits them really hard that they don't actually know what they're going to do next. And that gets sort of sniffed out and the deal falls apart. So doing that, a common misconception is, to get back to your question, that I'm going to sell my business and sail off into the sunset, as they say, with no problems and no issues and no worries. And by the way, for young founders to do that, hate to break it to you, but you have a whole other set of issues now trying to raise young human kids in an environment where there's a lot of financial abundance and trying to get them to still be, productive and quality members of society. So like the challenge is, that they don't stop. So that's a misconception, is that all
That's
problems
really
go away.
That's really good, man. And that, I can imagine it can be such a singular focus for so long, especially people that are building business with the outset goal of an exit, of a sale. And it just is such a honed in focus for so long that when you hit it, you can't see the next step past that, and how that could be, really disorienting when it actually happens. Let's talk a little bit about, I don't know if this is like backing up or going up a level or whatever, but let's talk about operating your business, the business that you're in, and as how you work as an operator. What is something that, as you're in your business and running your company, what's seems to be just a truism, a gospel truth that you can consistently go back to as you run your business, just a principle that seems to prove itself out over and over again, whether it has to be in hiring and the people you're bringing on board, or your relationship with your clients and customers. What's something that consistently proves itself out as something you live by as an operator?
Gosh, the first one, I hope it doesn't sound like a cop-out, but I do think it's insanely important, and that's just to tell the truth. I mean, that's the first one that comes to mind, whether it's a tough conversation with an employee or a mistake you made, for a client. Like, tell the truth early, and tell it straight. So that's one that always, like, kind of always come back to that.
Honestly, if somebody is talking with their advisor, something you'd want to hear. Like start with the truth. That's a really, really good trait to have. So let's also talk about. So you can talk about this in terms of your company as you grew it, other companies that you've seen grow, or both. Pick and choose from both. But we're kind of in the section where I try to grab from founders, from the guests I have on, like some practical things I can pull out, so that other founders and entrepreneurs in the space that can hear those things and in whatever way apply it in their own journeys. And one of those key pain points of building a business as you grow is scaling, is taking those next steps and growing your business wider and wider, bigger and bigger. And what's a word of caution that you could give based on your growth in your business or others that you've seen grow theirs, for entrepreneurs in that position where they've got some traction, they've got some, whatever you want to call it, product market fit, they have some momentum, and they're actively scaling? What's a word of caution you can offer based on what you've seen and experienced?
I would say be very intentional about increasing your lifestyle with your take home cash, because I'm not here to say don't increase your lifestyle. But be very intentional about it. If you're doing it, just understand what it means, because everything's trade-offs. So you want to buy a bigger home, that there's less money there to outsource or delegate or hire more people and reinvest back into your business. You might reinvest, all of it back into the business, but be intentional about that too. Why are you doing it? Are you doing it in the context of a what is enough for you number and whatnot? But don't just, if you just aren't intentional about these decisions, lifestyle creep happens. And next thing you know, it's like, oh man, I'd love to hire that next piece that I need in my business, but I need to take that money home because I have this, I have bills to pay. And you don't want that to happen on accident. You want to be really intentional about what you're doing with your cash flow.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that that's a really good way to say it, is like, it's not that you're advocating for, I mean, every situation is different. Every person's personal, every business is personal, as we talked about. But so it's not you're advocating not to do that, but to do it with purpose and with intention, and to know why. Like, why do you want that next thing, and how much is enough? What's the North Star? And to ask those questions so that as you're making those choices, you know why you are, and it's not just this like, I don't know, I'm making more, so I'm spending more. Like there's purpose and intention behind the decisions.
And ideally it's tied to something that's really important to you. It's totally fine. I mean, it's great to spend money on, some nice things. Like especially if it's for stuff that's really important to you, maybe it's a nice opportunity for your family, or, you're prioritizing the people you love, and like, great. That's a great reason to be. We're not business owners so that we just pile everything back in. Right. And then suffer for the 15 years we build our business and make our family suffer. Like, we don't, you don't want to do that either. At least I wouldn't advocate for it. We're out here trying to live our best lives,
Right. Totally. I think it's a really good balance. Yep, absolutely. Let's move into a couple closing questions I have for you, Chris. One would be, when you speak with other entrepreneurs, other founders in your business, or just in your life as you interact with them, what's a question that you get asked most often? And what's a question that you find that they're not asking you, but you believe they should be?
I could crack a joke and say the question I get asked most frequently by people I talk to is, what are your fees?
Yeah. Yeah, right. First, before we really start this conversation, what are your fees? Yeah.
I mean, that's the question I get asked most, and rightly so, of course.
Yeah.
But a question that people should be asking, I think, so I'm getting very specific and answering your question in the context of what people should be asking their financial advisor or a prospective financial advisor, either or. You asked it. I think it's, how are you actually differentiated? And then listen really carefully, because, you could hear a lot of BS, or you could hear a lot of great stuff. But that is a really good question, because in this world of commoditized knowledge and information, the specialization just becomes more and more important, also more and more doable, and more valuable. So a person working with a generalist is just not going to benefit as much as, another person working with a specialist. It's the same thing in medicine too, right? And so I think it's worth asking, and getting to the bottom of, are you a specialist
Yeah.
for, people like me? And, if not, there's, a case for thinking twice about maybe finding a specialist.
Yeah. And are you a specialist? And if so, like how? Yeah. Like what
If
are
so,
those?
how?
Yeah, totally. And listening
Specifically,
closely. Mm-hmm.
not that you just have clients that are
Right.
like that.
Right.
No,
Right.
what's the service model, are your fees structured differently for me because I'm a founder versus, not, like, real specific stuff.
What is one tool or quote or book, something that you have found indispensable to you in your progress, either personally or professionally over the years?
I suppose it's a little weird to refer to someone like this as, as an object, but I mean, mentors, man.
In what way, in what capacity? Like, how have you used mentors to, give yourself more forward progress in your life?
Seeking out people who have been there and done that, but specifically though, people who
Yeah.
you like want to be more like.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've learned as I've gotten older is that there are plenty of people who have been there and done that, but that, you get to
Yeah.
know them and you're like, oh, I
In a
don't
different
want to
way than
be
you would want to do it.
more
Yeah.
like them. Yeah. Um, Seeking out people who have been there and done that, and those people being, people that you want to be more like is,
Mm-hmm.
I think, as they say, this isn't, original knowledge over here, but that's just the way to just fast forward,
Mm-hmm.
everything.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
How have you
so
found yourself best able to get into those relationships, to ask for, I mean, so often, especially at the beginning, when you build rapport and build a relationship, it can often be very mutual. But at the beginning, are you just reaching out cold? Are you seeing somebody who you're like, man, that person has been there, they've done that, and in the way I want to do it, they're the person I want to be or like it? Are you just striking up that conversation and saying, would you spend that time with me? Like, would you impart your knowledge for free? Like, how do you start that conversation?
I have done that a ton in my career. Absolutely. Where I've just, straight up asked somebody for, for their time, or even to be a mentor. I think that as with some mentors who are very, very busy people, I love the strategy of figuring out a way to bring them value, out of the gate, bring something to them that you're going to do that's going to be helpful in some capacity to them before asking, for their time. But I also think, just asking people, I think people love helping people. So I think asking is definitely not something that's out of style or that should be, forgotten about, even if you're not particularly bringing some special value to someone.
Yeah, I think
That
that often
totally
people are
works.
too nervous to approach that conversation, but people are willing to help so often. Yeah.
People are totally willing to help. And those conversations are you have no idea what comes of them and how
Yeah.
much value, may be there. So,
Totally.
I'll tell you, when someone asks me, I'm always like,
Hmm.
I always am excited to, spend some time with them. Typically it's someone who wants to start their own, like, financial advisory
Hmm.
practice, right? Cause they're
Hmm.
doing exactly what I just said. Find
Yep.
someone who's been there before. And I love having those conversations. Like,
Yeah.
oh man, this is exciting. I
Hmm.
always tell them too. I'm like, you're going to do so many things better than I am.
Hmm.
You just got to remember, all that you need. The only ingredient you need to add that you haven't added yet is time, and you're going to have plenty of success.
Hmm. I love it. I love it. That's really good. Great insight. Chris, this was awesome. There's a lot of really unique things in here. You have such a unique perspective, being a founder yourself, but then working with founders and seeing them across the spectrum of their experience and as they build their business. So this was super, unique insight that I loved getting, and thanks for sharing it with my listeners.
Hey, thanks for having me. I really appreciate the invite. It was a lot of fun. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris. You take care. If you guys enjoyed the show, leaving a review is the best way to help others find it. Second only to sharing it directly with your friends and family. Thanks so much for helping get the word out. Hit me up at brandon@readysetstartuppod.com if you have additional questions about a topic I covered, have suggestions about another area you'd like to see me dig into, or just want to say hi. Please reach out. I'd love to get in touch. Keep imagining, keep creating, Keep inspiring your spheres of influence with what you're passionate about. The world may just need that dream that's in your head. See you next time.